brought goodies.
Yeah, we did. We got 3 prizes we're going to give out towards the end of this panel.
Yeah. We're making a tradition out of it. This is 2 years in a row is a tradition, right?
Yes.
Well, hey, everybody. It's so awesome to see you here. It's still pretty early in the convention, and I hope everyone's having a fantastic time. We certainly are. We love Con of Thrones, and it's cool to be here in Nashville with our people. As I said to my first panel this morning, it's like a lot of us are somewhat on the introverted side, and when we're here for the weekend, it's like we're temporarily not. It's like, oh, that's what that's like, right? So, yeah.
Totally agree, and I feel like it gets better year after year as you get to know more and more people, and it gets more and more like a family, and yeah, it's lovely. And so I recommend if it's your first year, please come back.
Oh, I'm going to go ahead and ask a question. How many people have been to all 3 Con of Thrones? A few people out there?
Awesome.
How many people were at their first con of any kind ever?
Oh,
A bunch of people out there, right?
Very cool. Nice. Well,
Hopefully you're sold.
So we wanted to do another little quick poll to start this off. How many of you are show only? Okay. Oh, very good.
1 or 2. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's what we needed to know because we wanted to know how to gear this recording.
yeah.
So, makes it pretty easy.
That's right. We have mostly what we want to try to do today, besides our giveaway, is kind of hype up what's still yet to come. Not so much the prequel show, though we're definitely hyped about that. It's just there's just so much that's harder to tell what's going to happen with that. We're talking about what's left to come in the books, and we're so excited about a variety of book plots. So there's 3 basic categories here. Things the show didn't touch at all, things the show barely touched, and things the show touched, but definitely in ways we know are going to be different. And I don't mean like, oh, they're not going to do that in the books. I mean like Gendry and Edric Storm are combined into one character. That's clearly not they're not going to merge during the books, right?
Or will they?
Melisandre's magic is going to go farther than we thought. Yeah.
But so out of those 3 categories, just off the top of our heads, we came up with like 60 plus things that we just don't know yet. So, and that's just thinking for a little while. So there's so many more.
Yeah, my brain, I have a panel even on spoilers. And so I'm definitely thinking in terms of the idea, I've said this a lot of times, the idea, like if you knew what was going to happen in Ed Start before you started, it's not like it's not good, right? So even if somehow we like know for sure that Bran will be king and that Jon kills Dany, okay, there's no reason to read the books now. That's just a silly thought. There's so many other things to know about Euron. There's so many things to know about so much stuff. That we're going to try to do a whole panel about it.
Not even to mention, like, getting to see and read their inner thoughts. Like, not even about mysteries, but just knowing what was going on in their head in certain scenes.
We're just enjoying the quality of the writing and just letting George take you away. Like,
work up our appetites.
Yes, the food. I definitely look forward to those food descriptions.
I was talking to someone the other day about just how specific the language is for the food, like as if everyone really has a refined palate that can recognize every item, every vegetable.
I just realized that's probably why he's struggling with the Winds of Winter, is because that's when there's going to be so much starvation, there won't be as many foods. Like when you can't write feasts when there's everyone's starving. Oh, I think we figured it out.
Grub feasts.
Crack the case. So like just a couple of really simple examples that are more obvious, maybe then we move into maybe less obvious ones, or maybe things that are subtle or they may have just slipped your mind temporarily. A good one that was fairly prominent on the show, but not exactly deep or explained, is Valyrian steel, right? Like in the show, what we see is Valyrian steel is effective against others.
Yeah.
That's about it, right? Like, yeah, it's okay. What about, and there's rumors that it takes child sacrifice or blood sacrifice to make it. Will ice be reforged? Will all these different named Valyrian steel
armor at last?
Yeah, and there's so many more named swords. Like, what's going to happen? Well, so
are we going to see Blackfire and Dark Sister?
Right.
What about Dawn? What's the
Dawn?
What's the deal with Dawn exactly?
Dawn was not really in the show. They gave a nod to it with that sword handle, but I mean, not really. So that's a really fun thing to look forward to, and that's just this is just pieces of equipment.
Yeah.
What's another good one?
Oh, I think one of the ones that are particularly interesting to me is just the children of the forest in general. They just weren't really explored as much in the books, and I'm very intrigued by them. And Jojen paste. I want to know if they did that. So that's one for me.
Right. Cliffhanger there. Sean, what do you think about, like, you as a mostly show watcher, you obviously you would have some thoughts on some of these topics like Children of the Forest. You probably wanted more out of the Children
I
of the
wanted
Forest.
to see Howland Reed.
Yeah,
I want to see Howland Reed. I wanted so bad for him to come into play. And I'm hoping, assuming it'll happen in the books.
Yeah, Howland Reed is super important. Yeah,
Watch, it doesn't happen in the books.
like-
He just runs. I think there was a joke in an earlier panel where he just runs through the screen holding a sign that says R plus L equals J. And that's it. He goes right back to the swamp. Yeah, and of course, along with the Children of the Forest, the others themselves, the White Walkers, and not just them and the mystery behind them. I mean, what's up with the big deal with Craster? Who woke them up? If that's even what happened. And is any of that going to be explained? How are they actually defeated? Because there's no Night King in the book, so that's got to be very different. And
You made me want to ask a question, because that is maybe the biggest piece of the show that's not in the books. Is that fair?
it's up there,
Okay.
top 5 maybe.
Yeah.
What parallels are there? Is some story of some Night King in the past? Is
The
there
Night's King.
The
Yes.
Night's King, different. Okay. How much setup? Is there enough setup? Do you think that is something George might lead into? Is that something you think might be coming? Is it?
No, I don't think so. He talked about how he was a legendary figure, more of like myth, like, and he compared him to like Lan the Clever and stuff like that. So the idea of him being someone who still exists is weird to me, but the idea of a figure like that, like the Night's King, who might, like that playing out in the future, some variation parallel is more likely to
Maybe a different title, and I can't really even say a different history because we didn't get, I guess, the vaguest of history from the show.
Well, thinking
but like,
about-
do you think the
Very
others will have
different.
a leader
The
of
Night's
sorts?
King is
You know,
very
maybe?
different than the Night King, to
Right,
be clear. They
right.
just kind of co-opted the name.
Yeah.
But as to the Night King, I have long wondered how much of a hierarchy there is within the others.
I'm guessing there may not be one. There may not be a leader because they were created. If the show is accurate, roughly accurate, they were created as weapons against humanity. They wouldn't necessarily have be a species on their own, but they might have
They've
turned
worked
into
for a long
something.
time,
They may have changed, right? They may have evolved into something else. That's something that George has done in some of his sci-fis. Have engineered species evolve into something else, and that might be what the others are in a sense, like kind of a very loose way, like the fantasy version instead of a sci-fi version. But okay, here's another one for you, Sean. Like, did the long night really seem that long to you?
Yeah.
Not a single person went hungry.
Yeah.
Like,
Not you.
Hey, you can't speak for all those small
that's
folk.
true. Maybe a single person went hungry. That one guy went hungry.
Andrew McClay looked pretty hungry, sitting there in the cold.
Well, he's well fed now, so he's
Yeah, it is a thing that I am often frustrated with in shows, is the logistics of how things are happening. How are people being fed? Where are the horses pooping? You know what I mean? When you have these big armies around, these are like, it's funny to think about, but it is the type of thing that when they do
They
address
need to
it,
get their armor off and go to use the bathroom.
yeah, stuff like that. And George does more of that in the books than they do in the show. It's like a weird thing for me to be excited about, but I literally am more excited to hear a conversation between some sergeant and some lieutenant about where the horses are than I am about watching the sergeant and a lieutenant hack with their swords.
Yeah, and that's
There's not as much character development when they're out hacking with their swords as when they're having a discussion about logistical issues.
and that seems like we will have to have those because there's going to be all sorts of food problems and
Yeah, when it
cold
comes to the
problems,
winter.
infections from when people have.
I'm
don't have
hopeful
food.
that we will see Sansa in the role. Like that was a lot of her big role, and we always appreciated just how much her eyes were on that. She was thinking about it a lot, and I expect we'll see her taking that role in the books to a certain extent as well. So hopefully we get your logistical conversations, less about war and more about feeding.
Yeah. And it seems something like Martin, like he has said, that's what he wants Tolkien to do.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Wants
Okay,
to know.
so you mentioned Howland Reed. That's a really good one, and it relates to some of this stuff. And a character that was on the show, but technically Howland was on the show, but barely. Who was on the show, but just kind of left, was Mira. Is that really what's going to happen in the book? She's just going to be like, I'm leaving now. He's like, okay, see you later. Thanks. Kind of doubt that's how it goes, right, y'all? And that same goes for so many characters. I mentioned Gendry and Edric Storm, but what about Dany has Bloodriders in the books.
Yes.
Doesn't have them in the show.
And George has specifically mentioned said Bloodriders when
Yeah.
he's like, you haven't seen the story for like Arya and X characters. He specifically named them.
And along with the Bloodriders, you have her handmaids. You have Eerie and Jiki are still alive. Dorea's dead, but the other two are still there. And they were killed very early in the show. And her horse. They killed her horse off in season 2. Her horse is still alive, y'all. That horse is in play.
Travel across the sea.
Yeah, Barristan's riding that horse right now.
Maybe Arya's riding that horse right now
as he waits for the next book. And then
Missandei too is completely
Missandei.
different. She's a little child.
Yeah.
Like, will Missandei still be killed? That would be extra tragic.
Yeah.
I
And-
hope not.
A perfect example, another character who's a child that's not a child in the show, like Tommen. He may
I thought you were
end
gonna
up
say
still going
Jon
out a
Snow.
window.
Yeah, like more like one of the sand snakes pushes him out or does something like that.
Yeah, which
but-
may be kind of similar, but still, there's a chance for some different things. Like I said, Benjen.
Yeah.
Benjen's not just going to be a dude who rides in to save people twice.
Yeah, he's not cold hands.
Yeah,
As
it's
Georgia said, he's
comes
not
in,
cold hands.
I saved Bran and Mira. I saved John, and that's it. That's all I did. I really think there's more to Benjen than that. Like, why is he still alive? Did they really just shove dragon glass in his chest to stop the magic, even though that's also what they did to make the Night King? I don't quite get how does that work exactly? Is it a different type of dragon glass?
They say some
It's a
special
different
words.
moon.
Yeah.
Different, yeah.
What about Jock and Hagar, right? In the show, he kind of does his thing with Arya, but in the books, he's chilling at the Citadel, about to do something.
The whole Citadel plot obviously is vastly different. That's one of the things I'm actually very, very excited about because we've got Sorella Sand, who wasn't even in the show.
Yeah.
And we've got Sam there hanging out. Euron's coming by. Like, things are about to get wild there.
Yeah, what did you think of the grayscale plot, Sean, on the show?
It seemed like I'm aware that there's something in the books with that, right? And in the show, the whole time I kept wondering, where is this going to go? Where is this leading? How does this matter?
Didn't really go anywhere.
And it seems like it didn't. I guess it was a way to tie Jorah in with Sam.
But then it didn't go anywhere ultimately with Jorah and Sam really later in the season.
And even the thoughts, because I felt like a lot of people speculated that, Grayskull was going to break out in Old Town. And that seems intriguing, but there's not enough time for that. How are they going to cover that in 1 or 2 more seasons or whatever?
In the show.
But in the books, you're right. Something's happening, but it's not something that can be spoiled because there is one character who has grayscale that's just arrived in Westeros, and maybe Shireen's can wake up, but that hasn't actually happened. It might happen, so it's like
it might happen.
That's something. What about Illyrio? Illyrio was basically in one scene early in the show and then didn't appear again. That
as what
They were even
seemed to be a powerful character.
They were even at his
Central-
manse, and he was just like,
yeah, he just wasn't there. He's like, yeah, Illyrio's away on other business. Yeah, this isn't important. The waif, we're talking about Jaqen, but we didn't mention the waif. The waif is a completely different character in the book. She's like equal level to the kindly man, and there's no antagonism between her and Arya whatsoever. So that's clearly different.
This reminds me, when you mention her, I think of the House of Black and White,
yeah.
which also has all sorts of mysteries behind it. Its connections to the Iron Bank, maybe.
Yeah.
There's also something that's just this superficial character, a couple scenes that even in a show which doesn't treat it as such, they present it to us like they're this immensely powerful force. Like all the Westeros can't think to stand up to them,
Yeah.
And you're just like, oh, there's Tycho Nestorius.
Yeah.
He's gone.
And it's just a guy, and then he goes, yeah.
Yeah, you're right. It's like Chekhov's bank because we hear this line of when they think, when the Iron Bank backs somebody, other people lose. And well, we haven't really seen that. And it's certainly not in the books. They started backing Stannis, and that's where things lie. And Stannis probably isn't going to win in the end. Sorry. But that means the Iron Bank's going to switch to somebody else.
Just because he doesn't win doesn't mean we don't love him.
Did they switch to young Griff?
We love him, right?
Dany?
Right.
I mean,
Yeah. Yes.
Probably young Griff, not Dany. I mean, they're more. I think they're more likely to switch.
Yeah,
It's
I mean,
a conundrum.
I think young Griff is the case for sure.
Seems more likely because of the dragons, but then
There's the question of how much young Griff and Dany will even, how much they will clash immediately or how much they will get along for a period of time,
Yeah.
Like in the show we see Daenerys' like clear worry about being put out of her throne, her rightful throne, both of them would do that. So that would really set someone off to have 2 male claimants come out of nowhere.
And what's another one? And speaking of Daenerys,
I mean,
the dragon.
Yeah, all the dragon riding.
Dragon riding, dragon horn, dragon saddles, maybe. Like, none of that was in the show.
There's so much speculation about which 3 characters are going to ride the
3
dragon.
heads of the dragon.
Tyrion and Bran and
Jon.
Euron steal a
Dany's got to be
dragon.
one, right?
Yeah. Night King gets a dragon.
Yeah.
Jon rides one a couple times.
No one could have guessed. Yeah.
And then just pivoting from them to the direwolves.
But
Hello.
I want to talk about for a second. We mentioned Night King.
Sure.
We got kind of distracted on that, but with Night King, I can't help but think about who could play a similar role to Night King, what his actions were in the show. Like, there's certain things that say that had to happen in the books. The wall had to come down, Daenerys had to have a dragon killed, and someone had to take it from her. And Euron in the books is well set up to do both of those things potentially.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a really interesting thing, and I think it points to him doing it if those things happened in the show, but it'll be very different.
Yeah, just Euron in general. That's a great point. Euron is a massively different character in the show versus books. He's far more magical, and that's just a general theme, right? The show, one of the things the show tended to cut a lot of was magic in general.
Yeah.
Just the like higher fantasy elements were I'm not sure why they made that decision, but it seems to be a pretty constant.
Yeah. Because not all of it is budget. For example, like Euron's stuff, like that isn't like it doesn't.
They did ship battles instead. Like that's expensive.
Yeah, it's true.
But perfect example there too. Like you said, you mentioned his the Old Town plot with him.
Yeah,
that's super exciting, and we have no idea what's going to happen. And all these different battles that are about to happen. We have Battle of Ice, Battle of Fire. If you want to call Euron's battle the Battle of Blood or whatever.
Yeah, Battle of Blood. Yeah, that's what we've been calling it.
And
there's a lot of blood involved, Sean. Let's just say that.
And what about
battle? No.
I know. Oh, it's a whole other different thing.
Oh, okay.
Anyways, you'll find out in like 10 years when you finish, I guess. Apparently.
So, thinking again about the House of Black and White.
Yeah.
And the Iron Bank. Also, the Lord of Light. I think the House of Black and White is kind of connected to religion.
Yeah.
And this powerful organization that we don't understand the motivations of. They seem to be concerned with somewhat, I guess, the happenings of the world.
Yeah.
And the Lord of Light certainly seems to be proactively, definitively. We've gotten a lot more of that, especially in connection to the other storylines we're watching. How much more do you think? Is that something that just in the end, it's just going to be a mystery? We're still not going to know? Do you think there is a mechanism to reveal to us what the Lord of Light
I don't.
Or Melisandre or whoever?
I don't think that the gods will ever be transparent in that way. I think
not with that attitude.
But no, I don't think that that's what he wants to. I don't think he wants to make it that transparent. I think it's meant to be, something that you can decide for yourself how real it is. Or like, I like to think, for example, that they're just interpreting different magical forces as certain gods, and some people are, like one person calls it the god of this, another person calls it the god of that, but it's the same.
It's really the same thing. Yeah. But do you think there will be some moment where someone will like consider, even if there's not some sort of proof presented to them? Do you think someone might piece together? Wait a minute. Your religion's history is just like my religion's history. Maybe we're worshiping the same God and calling it a different name.
Well, there's some crossover with that. Well, like you said, that's actually a great segue because there is a lot of crossover in terms of different cultures and their versions of both the Long Night and the Azor Ahai legends, or Priest that was promised. So
we'll be talking about that in our many-faced Azor Ahai panel tomorrow. But there's a lot to say there, and whether people in the history books have really, or in current day, like Tyrion or Sam reading it, have really, those are the two that would do it. You have to, like, Tyrion or Sam would read something and be like, wow, these are very similar. Like, they're the two that would do it. But really, no one has pointed it out very much, but a little bit in the history books.
Like, I wondered if, let's say, Tyrion or Sam had a conversation with Melisandre. If they could, like, especially if Melisandre's going through a realization she might have been wrong. Yeah. They might pick each other's brains and come to some conclusion. Shift their gear.
It's a hard pairing for me to imagine, I have to say.
Yeah, well, but speaking of that plot in general, you have the High Priest of R'hllor in the largest red temple in the world saying that Daenerys is Azor Ahai and that anyone who follows her will have life eternal and that she'll bring an endless summer, which...
Sounds like a cult.
Yeah, and like, what is up with that? That's interesting. Basically, I think
quite an endorsement.
It's quite an endorsement. She's like, you're basically Jesus. So these people are going to want to follow her. And in Westeros, on the show, the only real R'hllorist that was on her side was Melisandre.
Yeah, we saw Kinvara,
Yeah, who talked to her for a minute. You're right. That was pretty brief, but that counts. Yeah, but there should be like in the books, we should expect to see like hordes of these.
Yeah, I
people.
expect she'll have a lot of them. Yeah. It'll be like if you think about the culture clash, with the Dothraki coming in and all these people up in the north in general. Whether Daenerys makes it up to the north, whether depending on where the battle is, who knows? But either way, bringing a bunch of Dothraki and R'hllorists and a bunch of other cultures over there is going to be interesting.
It's going to be a lot to juggle, and alongside that, you have the notion that her people are going to have issues with the weather. But as far as other characters that we haven't talked about, maybe just so many families, like you even said, why don't they, who's in charge of the Stormlands? What else is happening in the Reach? All these other places. Well, there's more. There's two
got
other.
all these Tyrells.
There's so many more Tyrells. There's Willis and Garland, and then there's, of course, in the Stormlands, there's lots of other houses. Now there's the Golden Company too.
There's some more Mormonts also, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there are more Mormonts.
There are Mormonts.
Mormonts.
How many mores are in that word? But and something we forgot about with the R'hllor stuff. Melisandre says that her powers are stronger at the Wall, but we haven't really seen that happen yet. And Makoro did that thing to Victarion. Like, what is that? He's got this firearm. That's.
Sean's face, he's like, what? A firearm?
I'm curious what's going to happen with that for sure. What is that?
Yes.
What is that thing? And
we've got a bunch of other characters. We haven't even like Orain Waters, who's setting himself up, as a little pirate king, of course.
Is he going to hook up with Euron? Is he going to hook up with Dany?
Hook up with them, huh?
Hook up. Oh. What about
you have a hook hand?
What about just Dorne in general?
Yeah,
right?
just obviously Dorne. Enough said.
Dorne's
so different.
Dorne's a good example of all three categories we listed at the beginning of both. Wasn't touched at all in certain ways, was not, only touched a little bit in some ways, and was touched in ways that we know are going to be different.
Touched in bad ways.
Yeah, touched. Where did the bad show touch you? Right in the door.
Here's another one, the Harpy stuff.
Yeah, the Harpy stuff.
Really interesting too.
Hey,
Yeah.
real quick, I hate to be negative in general, but when it's so clever, someone has a shirt, it says, stick 'em with the disappointing end.
Did you see that this weekend?
I didn't even see it, someone just told me about it.
That is
But I can envision it.
That is pretty good. Yeah, the Sand Snakes. Okay, so we have in the show, there's 3 Sand Snakes, and Ilaria is the complete opposite of her book.
Yeah. As opposite as you could possibly be.
And you have one of
She
the
actually
Sand
short and blonde? Or?
No, personality-wise.
And of course, there's one of the daughters is in disguise at the Citadel, and what is
we
that
touched
all
on
about?
that already.
Oh, we did? Okay, yeah.
Well, Sorella,
Right.
as Alaris there, as part of the whole Citadel thing that we just haven't really seen play out very much at all yet. And
Really
Sean
set up
has
a big location.
little idea, but no, Sam has some friends at the Citadel. Basically, is the idea. Like he has some friends he's hanging out with, and some of them are very intriguing, and they cross paths with some interesting people, and you'll find out in, I guess, 7 years.
So just as Dorne was kind of both underused and misused, we can wonder maybe Doran Martell is going to go down. That kind of makes sense. That'll happen somewhere in the area. Hotad dies one way or another. But there's several characters missing. There's Arianne in general.
Yeah.
There's Darkstar. There's a lot of
two of the Sand Snakes are in King's Landing. Obviously, Obara's dealing with the Darkstar stuff. But yeah, and Nymeria and Tyene, I don't know what they're gonna get up to in King's Landing. I mean, obviously,
so much.
A good amount of stuff.
They'll be busy.
So I have what might be a difficult question. I might be putting you on the spot here, but I'm thinking about a panel that Jen did about how there are stories within the story.
Yeah.
How a lot of times a character is telling a story about some other character in the past.
Okay.
Are there any of those that are dangling? Is there some character in the past we've been told something about, but we haven't got the rest of it?
Well, there's Tyrion's joke.
No, okay. That's a good one.
You mean like a certain historical figure, or?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Maybe even something like hundreds of years in the past, or maybe even someone's father that we don't know what happened to or something.
They're like
or someone's mother that
I'll
we
tell
don't
you
know
what-
the name
yes,
of.
that's what I was about to say, is that we don't know the name of the unnamed Princess of Dorne, which everyone here probably knows if you watch our show, that I am very frustrated by that. But yeah, maybe we'll learn it in the books, but you would have thought we would learn it in the history books, so I don't know.
Probably the most mysterious character from recent history that needs to be explained more is Rhaegar, I would
Yeah.
say.
Yeah.
And he is not super explained in the show. He's just like, that's Jon's dad.
Yeah.
And they didn't really go that much deeper with it. So like the whole Night of the Laughing Tree incident and why he, like, what, was there a prophecy? Was there multiple prophecies?
Well, I'm just excited. Related to that, the whole thing with Summerhall, which the tragedy at Summerhall, which is both in the future for Dunk and Egg and in the past for A Song of Ice and Fire. But we'll learn more about it eventually.
And there's even deeper mysteries, such as it came out in the last few books that only a few hundred years ago, maybe 500 years ago, there was semi-regular blood sacrifice in the North. They would sacrifice to the trees, and well, surely there's more to that. Why did they do that? And, is it somehow related to what Craster was doing? Is it related to the...
Did they leave the body just laying out? Did they dig a grave? Did they mash the blood into a paste?
They may have. And if you guys remember in very early in Clash of Kings, I think it is, when they're passing through, maybe it's Storm, I forget. Anyway, they're passing through the village that was where Craster's mother was from. And they find like a hollowed out part of a werewood that has a bunch of bones in it. And they're like, sheep bone. Whoa, those aren't sheep bones. Those are person bones. And so that shows that just like we're told, all these old gods' traditions are still a little more present in the North. The true North, as the wildlings would say. And speaking of the wildlings, there's a lot to say about them. There's a lot of specific characters that we haven't mentioned that are like the wildlings on the show.
The
were
Thens are
dormant.
way different, for example. And we've got, Sigurn and Styr there. And of course, Alice is, we at least see her in the show, but it's so different.
Yeah.
So different.
We have the whole Mance Rayder issue, so to speak, as we were. And we wonder about other certain characters like the Weeper. Tormund is a very different character in the books. He's just
a
as
lot
lovable,
older too.
But he's a lot older, and he has all these kids.
If you look at one of the calendars, I forget which year, the art for Tormund, the artist made him George. Tormund is George R. R. Martin in the art. It's funny.
George R. R. Tormund.
Yes.
And Val. That's a good. Val the Wildling, super important. Yeah.
Everyone likes to think that at the end of the show, Jon goes north. He goes beyond the wall and he meets Val.
Yeah. That would be a nice ending for him.
So if I can shift gears a little bit, all these things we've named so far, it's sort of been in the context of what's going to happen with these, but there's also like, how are people going to feel about these events? I don't know how else to say that exactly, but for example, I'm thinking about Jon, if I understand right, that's like pending in the books. Right?
Yeah.
That's like we're just about to find out what's happening.
The spot Jon's at is he's dead.
Yeah. So in the show, it seemed like as he came back, he's like, all right, I guess I'm back. I just want to go home, and I don't want this trouble and this mess. And they're like, no, you have to do this. You have to just go, okay, I don't want it, but I'll do it. How much of that do you think like when we get Jon's perspective in the books after he comes back, assuming a lot here, but how different do you think his mentality about things will be? Even if he goes through the same actions, how...
We definitely have long thought that, he'll be, we think he'll be different because you see, personality changes in other people brought back from the dead. I mean, if his was relatively quickly, you might think that he's less affected, but George definitely likes to give a cost to certain magic.
Right. Yeah. We thought, and I thought it was a good prediction at the time, that part of the reason to keep Beric around was to talk to Jon about being dead. But they just didn't do that.
They never talked about it,
And so there's another good example of a character who's vastly different, Beric Dondarrion.
So kind of connected to that, what perspectives do you think we're going to get we haven't gotten yet Any of these
As
characters
in
we've
new
talked about
POVs?
so
Well,
far?
George has
Well,
said he won't do new
He
POVs.
said he's not going to do new POVs, except we do get prologues and epilogues,
Okay.
where those are he can do new POVs there.
We'll do standalones. with
So those are standalones, and I mean, he said he's not doing new POVs, but I mean, he's the author. If he decided to change his mind, he could. But I believe him that he's not going to. But there's some chance we could.
Yeah.
He wants to kind of narrow that down a bit.
Yeah.
So speaking of characters that were narrowed down, or regions we haven't talked about yet. We haven't talked about the Iron Islands very much.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
we
Asha's
talked
got a whole
about-
different name
We
in
talked
the
about
book.
Euron. A little
We
bit
did, we talked about
Euron.
Euron. You're right. We talked about more in Europe, but we didn't really talk about Theon and
Yes.
Asha, and we did talk about Victarion's arm, but Aeron as well. If he's is he just going to die in a few minutes? But yeah, that's just a perfect example of another family that was reduced in size because of the law of conservation of characters, right?
Yeah.
And so the Iron Islands, the reach, almost every region has significant underdeveloped stuff. We didn't even mention Blackfish. There's another one. Is he just really going to make a last stand at No, he's not, because we know he swam away from River Run in the books. So he's definitely going to pop up somewhere. Maybe
We didn't mention Edmure. I guess we kind of know what happened to Edmure, but
he shows up to embarrass himself. I figured that's not exactly going to... There's probably something in between that. Future embarrassment from Edmure is not
I'm really
unlikely.
curious, assuming there's this great council at the end of the books, who do we see represented in this great council? It's not going to be like in the show where you've got 4 Northerners and 1 Dornishman, and it's not a fair election at all. But I assume it'll be a nice time maybe to see a lot of these characters who have made it through everything come together and work some things out politically and figure out who should be king.
Yeah, that's really,
queen.
you're right. That's really interesting, because you're right. They won't just be, they basically had just the one candidate.
Yeah, and they talked about it as the little scene. But I imagine this will be a longer, more drawn out thing with a lot more arguing.
you can imagine, even if the scene played out the way it did, if they really do just meet for the first time, have this discussion, and then elect Bran out of nowhere, right? Let's see, even if that happens, the fact is, before that, there would have been letters sent.
Yeah.
There would have been discussions. Some of those characters there would have talked with each other. Would have been so much behind that, even if it did happen in such a sudden way with that exact representation. But we can expect it won't happen with that exact representation. Probably won't suddenly happen in that way, etc. But there's so much to think about how that could happen. We even a long time ago, we're talking about the idea of, it seemed like they were hinting at what Dany wanted to break the wheel. We're seeing this election in the Iron Islands. We just already know it's an issue to just have the oldest son be the leader. There's so many problems with that, right? So the idea that they might come up with something new at the end rather than Dany's the new queen or something. And I imagine it could come down to some sort of council. There's even precedent for that, right?
Exactly.
But certainly, I feel like that episode could be a whole book.
Yeah.
All the politicking and travels, just the little travels to get them together.
That I after the show's depiction, I thought a lot more about the titles of the books and the title A Dream of Spring, and how maybe what if A Dream of Spring really is more the majority of it is post defeating the others.
Yeah.
I hadn't considered as much of that. I considered it being the bulk of it and really leading into it with the.
Martin wanted to know what happened post defeating Sauron.
Exactly. So if I love the idea that A Dream of Spring could be very much about just the aftermath of everything.
Yeah, that's interesting, or at least a large chunk of it.
Chunk of it.
Yeah.
Yes.
I didn't know.
I think it'll start off still with maybe some darkness.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I didn't know there was a Night King when I was watching season 1, but I was still intrigued by this politicking behind the scenes between Littlefinger and Varys and Cersei and everything.
Yeah.
So.
Speaking of, Varys' plot is vastly different in the books, and some of the characters surrounding him. Obviously, young Griff. We mentioned Illyrio already, Jon Connington, then what's his name? The Half-Maester and Duck.
Halden.
Halden, Half-Maester, and Duck. And
all of them. Yeah, we didn't see them at all. Tyrion is a good one to mention just because his character might be very different. It is already pretty different, but in terms of going forward, whether Tyrion stays as dark as he is in the books or has more redemption or what, we've been talking about the idea that he could be more party to the burning of King's Landing than they depicted in the show, where he was, aghast at the idea.
Yeah, I agree, especially because he may not have some of the same conflict against his family. Even if he's at war with them, they may not be the ones holding King's Landing in the show, so there won't be the conflict level of conflict will be different.
So I want to ask a question. Something that happened in a show that I felt like it just happened and everyone just kept going. But Tyrion smashed someone to death with his bare hands. You remember that? When he was taken prison? Tyrion, when he was taken prison by Jorah and they were going to kill him. And he just killed that other prisoner. He just grabbed him and yanked him and smashed him in the face with his cut. And then, no PTSD from that? And just no, memory or telling a story to anyone about that?
Imagine the long night, what they went through there.
Yeah.
Think about fighting the dead.
Yeah.
Just think about fighting, period. But, think about that scenario and try to put, all of those people have to be, they'd have nightmares.
I kind of want to ask, did Tyrion do something like that? And thinking about he being darker in the books, that was a pretty dark moment in the show. Even if on some level it's self-defense, it's still pretty gruesome. I mean,
you see it really starting in particular, obviously, with Tywin and Shay. Before that,
yeah,
so, that's the start of it. But then you're in his head, and so you see he has a lot of very dark thoughts about things he wants to do.
What he would do to Cersei, and
you better not look in my head.
Do you have pink thoughts?
Dark pink.
And so just a couple of other small characters. Speaking of the dead, Lady Stoneheart, obviously, a big one.
A big character.
It's a huge character that we really are wondering what's going to happen with her. You got her in the Riverlands. In the show, the Brotherhood Without Banners eventually goes north. Will that happen?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah,
it could be.
Lady Stoneheart sees Jon Snow.
Slarkin was like,
we're both dead.
Reunion. Yeah. They have something in common, finally. Something to bond over at last.
There's Dario.
Dario.
He's not dead. Sorry, I segued away from that, but just I don't know that he's gonna be in charge of.
Yeah, Dany probably won't put Dario in charge of Marine. Yeah, that's true. That seems unlikely. And what about Strong Belwas? He's missing from the show.
Yeah.
He's fun. What happens to him? And another little character like Stone Snake. You guys remember Stone Snake, the ranger that ran off on foot when Jon was with Corn Halfhand, the one that they had to let go off. Maybe he made it. Probably not, but I'd like to know. Patchface.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's one of the creepiest characters there is. Even Melisandre is creeped out by Patch. He's a clown that was drowned that came back.
You know that song that Shireen sings? I know.
I do happen to know this. He was on the ship where the Baratheons patriarch died.
Yes. You have read that far. That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't even know if I read that or if I've just been told.
No, you did read it. It's in Crescent's chapter, the prologue.
I've read a few things out of order and been told a bunch of stories. I've been to so many panels. I've absorbed a lot.
So Melisandre has a vision of him with bloody lips and like, what? Yikes. Okay.
Don't you always have visions of clowns with bloody lips?
But I fear it's one of her right visions. Rob's will.
Yeah.
Not in the show at all. It may just kind of end up being the same thing where Jon is named king or something like that. But that has to be
the Hound. The Hound on the Quiet Isle. Will he stay there? Will he leave? Will he actually die with his brother?
The Clegane Bowl in the books is.
I don't want it. I want him to.
In the show, it was kind of.
Yeah. I don't know.
It seemed like
I don't want
suddenly
him to go for revenge at the end.
I want him after Sandor was a new man, he decided to more than ever resolve this revenge with his brother.
And right when he told Arya, he's like, "Don't end up like me." And I'm like, "You don't have to end up like you either." They're like,
"You don't have to end up like you."
That's good. That's very deep.
Yeah, I mean,
get a shirt. You don't have to end up like you.
You wonder, what kind of whether he'll reunite with Sansa. Like he had a brief minute with her in the show, and it makes you feel like maybe that'll happen.
Yeah, I think they'll have more than that conversation. You would think, but then that goes against the desire to keep him at the Quiet Isle. But I could still see him leaving and still being not so revenge driven.
Yeah.
Being like, he'll fight and be more of, defending.
Because he's
going to be more Lord of Light driven.
Yeah. I mean, I do think that based on the show that is more possible. It was something that before the show, I don't think people really contemplated at all. I don't know if it will be in the books, but it's a new mystery that we get to
And it's a
wonder.
great irony. You can see George.
Yeah, it is a great irony.
A major moment in the show that doesn't happen in the books is Sandor fighting Brienne, and that segues us to Brienne, who I don't think we haven't talked about her, right?
No, I mean, there's the whole Jaime and Brienne cliffhanger with Lady Stoneheart.
Yeah,
so
what's
that's
that all
big.
about? Yeah, and then just the idea that she kills Stannis doesn't seem that likely in the books, but maybe it's
Yeah.
possible.
Yeah, he surprised us many a time.
Yeah.
A lot of words to get to that,
Yeah, and what about the pink letter? Do you guys think it's just they breezed over it just because there was no mystery? Well, maybe, but I feel like there's a little more to it.
Is all of Rickon
They better give that back to
Rickon,
me.
huge
actually
one.
seeing Skagos or something like that?
Yeah, and things like
We get to see more of Osha because George specifically said that he liked Natalia Tena's performance so much that he wrote more for her.
yeah, one of
Which
those.
is very nice.
That is pretty cool, right? And of course, there's on the other side of them. There's I totally just blanked out. What was I going to say?
I don't know.
Tyrek. Remember, Tyrek vanishes in the bread riots. That we suspect that Varys stashed him. That seems to be the most popular theory. Well, did he? We don't know. Hidden somewhere. What about? We've got a couple of, the Vale. There's a huge plot happening in the Vale, right? With this big tournament of the Winged Knights and the
Whether, Sweet Robin will be killed or
Yeah,
not.
Sweet
I mean,
Robin
we really
goes to
think
sweet
he
sleep.
will.
How could he be killed? He's such a great swordsman.
Well, see in the show. No.
Greatest mystery in the books is what will Sweet Robin grow up and get as nicer looking as he did in the show.
Yeah, will he glow up?
Yeah.
Will the I'm kind of guessing that House Frey goes down a different way than Arya doing it all by herself. I don't know. It's possible.
Yeah, I don't know about all by herself.
That
I kind of
seems
see
a
it as
bit
more of a Stoneheart kind of thing.
Yeah.
To be honest. But also, I'm very curious, Lady Stoneheart, whether she would meet Arya and Sansa there and how they would each feel about that, whether that would get more emotion out of Stoneheart. I don't know. That's definitely
it's really hard to say. Well, we're getting close to the end of time here. We should start doing our giveaways, but
Yeah.
as you guys can see, we named 50 to 60 topics there and only talked about a minute or two for each of them. And so, wow, that's a lot, isn't it? There's
Yeah,
just
and
a
we
lot
didn't
left.
list nearly all of them. We didn't get to the ones we wrote. If there's any you wanted to bring up now while we do the number generator.
So we're going to randomly generate some numbers here. The way it's going to work is we've got three prizes, and the first winner gets to choose, and the second winner gets to choose from what's left. We have two maps from Michael Klarfeld. One is a Dorne map, one is an Iron Islands map, and the third is a King's Landing map.
Which is smaller is for people who are like, I can't possibly fit this, but I won. Well, you
But
have
it's
something
cloth,
too.
so you can fold
You
it.
can
yeah.
hopefully something for everyone. At
Yeah,
least.
this one has really nice
So-
detail. You can see it has all the nice landmarks
I
and the
don't think
gates
so.
and
It's gonna be
everything.
a huge
Okay,
issue.
okay.
Um,
If I were to unfurl this, you would be very impressed.
It's the Iron Islands map. If you follow us, you know Claradox, Michael Klarfeld at claradox.de. That's Klaradox. And if I stand up, you can see I got a Dorne dress here. And so that's the other map that we have to give away is Dorne, which is his most recent one. He's going to go through all the regions, though. Yeah. So
And,
he's awesome. And we wanted to give away some of his maps.
Sean and I are both in the Iron Islands map as models for historical figures.
I'm in there too. Not just you and
You're in the. I thought you were in the
I'm
Dorne
in
one.
there.
You're not in the Dorne. Okay.
I'm not in Dorne.
Oh, my bad. Sorry.
Row
What's our
six.
random number?
You have to go to row 6.
Okay, okay.
Person 16. and then
Should I
we go
bring
to-
all three and let the person choose?
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm going to just jump over the ledge.
Okay. This is why we budgeted some time for this. So. Okay, now Aziz, row 3, seat 13.
13.
Yeah, you want to do that?
Where did it start? Right, we're starting from.
Sean's doing that section, so you do the middle section, and then we'll do that section.
All right, so
You want, row 3, seat 13. If there's, You're doing the left, and yeah. Okay, now the middle. Then it's that person. Hell yeah. Okay, and now our next one. Let's see. Is there anyone back in row 11? I don't know if there is. I can't see you guys, so yeah. Someone is? Okay. This is row 10? Okay. Seat 6. Okay. We got our last winner. Yay. You coming back up? Yeah.
Later we'll do feats of strength.
Yeah.
A song.
A song from
I don't think we
Aziz.
prepared a song.
Mm-hmm.
A song for, yes, we could do it. Sean, you can do some dancing.
Yeah,
You were
you're dancing first, and we got
don't
a
have
whole
any music.
4 minutes. We
4
got
minutes?
through that giveaway way faster than we thought we would. We're like, how are we going to do this?
Yeah, we actually thought it would take for a long time. Well, we could take a question or two if you guys, or if anyone can name a plot line that we didn't name.
Yell out
You
a
guys are
plot line,
looking
and you're
for-
like, I'm looking.
Connington, that's a good one.
Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
which we were talking about grayscale. It relates to that.
Oh, Connington relates to grayscale.
Mhm. That's
I
who
thought
has it.
Connington related to young Griff.
Oh, he does. He relates
oh,
to several
Sean's
things.
mind is going to be reeling.
That's a whole new thing for you. Yeah. What's another one? Who's got another one? Darkstar.
Yeah?
Yep, Darkstar. You wonder if he's gonna stand in
Is he
for.
going to fizzle out quickly, or is he going to, yeah.
Is he gonna do some serious damage? You wonder if he'll end up wielding Dawn because he was kind of retrofit into the book.
Darkstar, by the way, Sean, is a Dane, another Dane
I didn't know that.
Okay.
Yeah. Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is gonna?
He's going to turn into Bran.
Yeah. How are Bran and Bloodraven gonna react to each other in the long run? Yeah. Is Bran gonna be like, wait?
I have to, you want me to merge with a tree?
Yeah.
No.
You want me to eat my friend? What? Yeah. They're very opposite personality-wise, I think. So there could be some real conflict there. What's another one? What's that?
Winterfell? Is that what I heard?
That is a good one. I mean, the Crypts of Winterfell on the show were kind of like, well, some things came out of the walls and they killed them. I feel like there'll be a little more to it. Maybe there'll be some specific, maybe there'll be a back door. You know, that was a theory that a lot of us had before that episode, that the others would find a back door into Winterfell. They would come in through through the caves or something like that. And that has been sort of hinted at for the books, like secret ways in. Stannis has Theon because he has knowledge of the castle. Yeah, that's Winterfell is a very different castle in the books. It's small in the show. It's much bigger in the books, and they wouldn't have to stick the army outside. They could actually all fit inside it, and it's got 2 levels. It's got 2 walls, not just one, and they're way higher. So.
How much have they dealt with the idea of the Dothraki wanting to come across the ocean on boats? Is that something like, oh, we'll do it, Dany? Or is it...
No, they do not want to.
Yeah.
That hasn't happened yet.
No, they haven't done it yet. And
Like, I'm wondering, will they? Is that going to be a point of
Presumably.
contention, you know?
presumably,
Yeah.
yes. But, given the show, too. Yeah. But by the way, just one last one that we didn't list because it's, I don't know, we just didn't list it at all. But is whether Bran's time-altering thing with Hodor, how that will play out, how different it will be.
Because that's a door in a tree isn't the most believable thing. You wonder if it's a door in through the wall or a door at Castle Black, but the others can't pass through that anyway. So it's a little hard to see that. I mean, that could be a door in the cave.
Yeah, I
but,
mean, people talked about the back entrance in the cave.
We're down to seconds, and there's
Yeah.
one quick thing I wanted to point out.
Okay.
I don't know how much difference it makes, but on the app, if you guys have the app, you can rate our panel and you can rate us. Do
You
that.
deserve 1
In
star.
case
I
it
just have to
matters
say-
for something, you know.
I just have to say, Sean is the one that's always like, follow me on Twitter. And of course, he's the one that's like, rate us on the app. Good job, Sean.
Right on top of things. Cool.
But yeah, we can get up and be done, I guess.
Yeah, well, thank you guys very much for coming. We appreciate it.
Yes. Real quick, also, I hope to see a bunch of you at game night tonight. We'll be doing Quiplash
Yeah.
from around
That's
8
gonna
to
be awesome.
9. So yeah. check that
Quiplash,
out.
we wrote Game of Thrones prompts, mostly Shea, but the
Yeah.
rest of us helped a bit. There's some really good, funny questions.
I would say 95% me.
Like, what is
Maybe
Cersei,
more.
like, for example, what does Cersei have on her nightstand? Or what's another one?
What did Mira?
What's the weirdest thing? What's the wildest thing old Nan did in her youth?
What did Mira text Bran after?
Yeah.
Things like
So,
that.
and then, so you guys, the way it works is people vote on, like, there's several people
They'll
playing,
vote
the rest of the audience is voting
yeah.
best answers.
That'll be fun,
They'll
yeah.
Come around.
Hope to see you then.
Thank you.